Creating a folder and file through code is accomplished using the system.io namespace. And now, we will be utilizing this kind of code using a task or using a code which is entitled NoteManager. The NoteManager corresponds to this UML statement or UML representation on what are the functionalities and what are the variables being declared in this program. By default, we have declared some variables that are public and some methods that are public. The first thing to consider is the default path. In our program, we'll be creating a certain variable on a class that we will be considering the default path of our application. On the default path, we will be identifying what would be the folders, would be the documents that we want to save or store on that specific path. The next part is to create an object. The object can be a folder or it can be a file. So if you observe there's a overload of object type, this corresponds whether it is a folder or a file. Another is to save file. The save file has a parameter object path, which is the path of the actual document to be edited, and then the object content. The object content is the actual content of a text box to be written to the file that being manipulated. And then we have the delete object. The delete object represents whether it is a file or it is a folder. The file or a folder has a parameter of object path that corresponds to the path of the actual folder or document to be deleted. And then we have another functionality, which is the rename object. Object path, and this has a data type of string. But later on, we need to modify this one because we have created the object path, and then we need to require what would be the actual new file name. Okay. Next is to get content, or to get content is to get the actual content of a certain path. So the certain path corresponds to the whether it is a folder or whether it is a file. So to get content, the get content represents on what are the documents inside a folder, and then what are the directories inside a folder. So we will be getting all of those folder inside the default path that we have declared, and the corresponding document or text file being created to that specific location. And then we have the load note. Load note represents the actual file or text file where we will be writing the actual content of a note. So we imagine that the actual application has a default folder, which is the default folder of our application. And then in that default folder, we can create a folder, a file. And then if there's a folder, we can also manage to create another folder inside to it. It goes deeper and deeper until you reach what would be the ideal path of the file or the file that you want to write in. So take note that this is a it's like a tree implementation, that in every node we can add a folder, and in every node we can add a folder or a file. It may have a subdirectory inside to it, and a file or note that is a text file that is saved on that specific folder that being selected. To continue, let's create a certain application and Visual C# that corresponds to the actual functionality that you want to accomplish. So first, we will be creating the actual project. Create new project, and then I'll select Windows Form app.net, or for me this one, I'll select this one, app.net, and then I'll change the name to NoteManager. Okay, so I'll be creating a certain program that is that has a name NoteManager. For the NoteManager, we will be having this kind of form, and we'll be having a different controls to be utilized. So first, we'll be designing the layout. The first thing that I want to do or to create is the actual panel. I'll divide the panel into two parts, or the form into two parts. The first one is the actual list view, and then the other one would be the actual text element or text content of the file that we have created. So first, I'll be creating the background of the form. So the background of the form, okay, I'll just change the background of the form. Then here is our panel. So I'll change this panel into a docking position. So docking position or docking state would be on the left side. Okay, then another panel which is its docking or the dock would be on the entire content or fill. Okay, so we have 1 and 2 panels. So if you look at the actual form, we have already divided our application into 2 parts. Now the next part would be I'll be creating another option, another control, which is a text box in here. Okay, and then I'll make it multi-line so that it will have a bigger size. Okay, so now on our multi-line, I'll add a button, another panel. Okay, I'll add another panel on the bottom part of the second panel. Okay, so the panel is here. And then what I want to accomplish is to dock this one on the bottom part. So in the bottom part, it will dock on the bottom part. And these are the options for this specific button. So I'll change the color of this one so that it will be distinguishable. So I'll change the color, this one. Okay, and then I'll add another button for the saving. So I have a button this side that will represent the saving of a certain text file. Okay, save. Okay, I have created the save, and then there. And then I want to add another panel that will dock on the top of the main form. I'll just select a panel here. Select the form. I'll select the form, and then I'll copy this one. Then I'll paste it. So if you look at it, it is already on the top. So but what I want to accomplish is I'll dock this one on the top. It will fill the entire top portion of the form. So top. Okay. And then bring to front. I think is okay. So panel 4 top, I can resize this one, resize it there. So I'll change the color of this one so that you can see the division of each panel. So the back color of this one would be, let me select this one again. So there you go, we have yellow. I'll make it more light there. So there is our first panel, top panel rather, and then I'll change this one into a more lighter one. Okay, and then this one would be dock fill. So the text box would be dock fill. So take note that this text box is under the panel 2. Then what I'll do is I'll select the form by pressing escape. By pressing escape, this one is already selecting the parent container, which is the panel 2. Now I'll go to the padding. Then I'll put some padding so that we can see a distance of the actual container and the actual controls inside to it. So there. So you can see this is the text box. This is the panel inside the text box. Inside the panel. Then on the left side, we'll be having a list view that contains all of the files. Okay. So first, I'll be having another panel on the top. Panel on the top corresponding to the actual options for this. So I'll dock this one on top. Okay. These are the options for the creation of a file or a folder. So here I'll be adding this one will be dock fill. Okay. I'll send it bring to front so that it will not go the back of the panel inside to it. So here we will be changing this one into changing the color so that it will be seen. So let's say this one, I think you can select this one. Okay, that one. And then the list view, if you observe, this is the list view. We will be adding some columns. I'll just add might be one column. Okay, one column, and then I'll change the size to 600. Okay, and then in that column I'll be editing the view into details. Here is the column, and then I'll change the size. I think it's large. I'll just change it to 400. Okay, now you can see the form, the column header is already there, and then I change the column name. Okay, I'll change it to file, text rather, to file or folder or file. Okay, so it will contain the folder and its corresponding file on the selected path. And then another important setting for our list view is to enable the full row select, and then grid lines. On the property, there is a full row select and grid lines. So I selected the list view, and then I'm changed the grid lines into true, and then full row select to true. So there. So if you observe, there is a scroll. So we edit the column to make it more smaller. So there you go. So if you see, we already have a list view text box for the application that we are creating. Now the next part is to create a text box and a label. So the text box represents on what would be the name of the file or a folder to be created. So for example, we create a text box. First is the text box. Here is the text box. This text box, and then I'll change the text box, and I'll add another component, a button and a label. Okay, so button and a label. This button represents on the button of creation, represents to create. Okay, and then so let's say save, and then this one is just a label. Input name of a folder or file. Okay, so I'll just put this one in the top so that it can be seen. And then I think we need to have an option to select what would be the file to be created. So what I'll be using is a radio button. I'll select a radio button, to radio button for the whether it is a note or it is a folder. So by default, we'll be creating a note, and then another is our what we call folder. Okay, I think we're done on designing our application. So I'll just change the font size so that it will be bigger. Okay. So I think we had managed to make it bigger. Now let's resize our fonts to big. If you observe, if we will be using docking options, it will follow. See that the controls had followed except on the button. Okay, so I think the button is missing right now. Okay, the button. Okay, anyways, we'll be looking at that one later on. Okay, so here is our form. Our form has a lot of functions to do. So now, the next part that we want to accomplish is to do the class. Okay, but for that, I'll be adding a label again. I forgot this one. So a label that will contain what would be the path that we are selecting. Okay, so I'll be changing this one into, the name would be path. Okay, path underscore, and then we change the name, the caption to empty. Okay, so there. I think it's already there. Now we want to create the actual Word document that we have created. This one, the UML. So for that one, we'll be adding a project and then a class. So the name of the class would be NoteManager. Let's see if it is acceptable. NoteManager. Okay, so we have now created the class NoteManager. So take note, we have able to do this one. So default path, we will be creating that one. So we'll be having a public default path is equal to right now we want to create our application to have a default folder, or to access the default folder application that start up. Okay, I think public string application that start up path. So take note that when we are using application that start up path, it will give us the actual folder, default folder where our exe file is located. So in our case, right now, the actual folder or the actual exe file is located in this location. So if you go to this one, we have open folder in File Explorer, in the Solution Explorer, and you can see that we have the bin, debug. Okay, it's still empty, but later on you can see it is located here, the exe file, because we did not run it yet. Now, suppose that we run it. Let's see what will happen. Okay, so you can see that our actual application have already run, but there is no path yet. Okay, this is the default path. There you go. You see there is a NoteManager that had been created. Later on, we'll be improving our design. So now on our class, we have the public default path. The next part is we want to create another object or method that will create or perform the creation of the object. So take note, it's a public create object. Okay, create object, and then it says that it has a parameter that is what we call the object name. Object name or object path. String object path. Okay, object path, and then object type. String. Okay, that is our first step. So public void, create object, and then another is we want to create a save file. Public void save file, and then it says that it needs a string object path. Okay, object path, and then text box. Okay, then txt object content. Okay, take note that when you are dealing with what we call the actual declaration of text box and application startup path, if it is not showing on the code snippet, for example, if you type text box like that and it does not appear, so what you need to do is to just import or type this one using system.windows.forms. So in that case, it will be enabled. So now we have already created save file. Next is public void delete object. Okay, so delete object represents the actual path, needs the actual path. Okay, so object path, and then I think that's all for delete object. So the next part is rename object. Public void rename object. So the rename object has a parameter of string object path, and then its corresponding string new file name. Okay. Next is get content. Public void get content. So we get the path, string path. Okay, object path, and then string list view lb content. So we have managed to create the actual class. So lastly, we will be creating public void load node. So if it is a node, so you want to load it. So string object then a text box where we'll be putting the actual content, that txt node. So we have managed to follow the UML that we had created. So now the next part would be to add the actual functionalities that we want to do. So the first thing that we want to do is to create an object. So creation of object represents whether it is a document or a file. So file. To create the file, it must have what we call the object path and the object type. So the object type represents whether it is a node or it's a folder. So in order for us to utilize the different techniques on creating a file and accessing a folder, you need to add this following namespace using system.io. So this is the actual library that you need to use in order for us to enable the editing or any folder and file manipulation. So to do that, on our program, we have create object. So take note that we have what we call the options would be the name of the type of the folder or type of the object to be created. So we need to identify what would be the object being created, if it is a note or if it is a path or a folder rather. So first is we'll be creating a conditional statement to check whether it is a path, a folder, or a note. So take note, we have the option note and then the folder. So first is I'll be creating a object type, check object type, that to lower. Okay, so I'll make it lowercase so that there is no problem on checking it. So for example, it is a note, therefore the code would be this one. Else, if it is not, therefore a code would be creation of the folder. So to accomplish that one, so first is we already have the path, object path, selected path, and then the selected path corresponds to the actual path plus the file name being created. So it's very simple. It's like file dot create, then we have the file dot create, and then we put the object path. But before that, it is very important to check whether if this path is already existing or file is existing. So file that exists is equal to false. Okay, so if the file is exists equal to false, so the object path, therefore we'll be creating the file. Okay, I think this one, object path. Okay, so we'll be creating the file, and then if same with the directory, we want to check whether if the directory is existing or not. So directory that exists is equal to false, therefore we want to create the directory, and it is the object path. So we have managed to create the actual program that generates or create a certain file. So here is a sample implementation of the actual program. Okay, we'll do that sample implementation when we are finished with the get content, this one. Okay, so let's test it so that we can check if there's an error or not. So on our save button, we have the save button here. Okay, so what we want to accomplish is to create a certain class instantiation for the NoteManager, and T and M, NoteManager. Now what we want to do on the button click is nm, so we want to call the create object nm that object path, nm that create object, and then we add the actual nm that path, default path, and then we add the actual type, which is the radio button, okay, I think it's more radio button, this one, radio button 2 and 1. Okay, so if radio button 1 dot check is equal to true, then what we'll do is I'll just create this one, type is equal to note. Okay, and then else s type is equal to folder. So I think we'll be using s type now. Okay. So what it does, what it does is to check whether the radio button 1 is checked or no. So if radio button 1 is checked, therefore the actual content would be the folder. So there is our program. Now here we'll just do some additional code here. So file exists, and then we add a function, a extension name of the file. Okay. Plus, okay, plus .txt. Then another is on the same button, we want to add the nm default folder into the actual path on the text box. Okay, so the text box would be the name of the file. For example, text box 1. Let's see if this text box 1. I'll change this one so that will not be confused. TXTF name. Okay, TXTF name. So TXTF name dot text. Okay. So now let's review. We will be checking on our class. We have created a default folder, default path, which is the default folder of our application. Then what we want to do is that every time that we select a certain location, we'll be adding what we call we can add a folder or a path. So right now on our default path, the default path would be one folder deep only. So we did not create any means so that it will be it will go to one folder and then it become a sub folder to it. But we'll be accomplishing that one later on. So if we run the actual program, so observe on our default folder, here is our default folder. We have NoteManager and PDB. So if I type, for example, test, and then I select it as a note and I press save. So if you observe, there is no error, and then we have already created a test.txt. So we have already created a text file for that note. And then if we want to create a folder, if I press save, it will create a folder. So there is a folder test. So basically, we have already managed to create a text file and a folder inside our default folder. Now, to do the other task that will load the actual content here, we'll be doing the load content. Okay, so load content or get content is this one. Object path, what would be the path of our folder? So that's the first part that we want to accomplish. So to do that, okay, so I'll be creating a array of file. Okay, so array of file, or rather string of array of string that f name is equal to, okay, so directory that get directories. Okay, so get directories, and then what we want to do is put object path. So the object path, so we'll be having the f name as our directory. Now for each actual item on the f name, we want to put it on the list view. So the only thing that we want to do is to get the actual directory. So let's see if what will how do we accomplish that one. So example, let's see, first list view lb content that get dot items dot add. Okay, and then we put fname. Okay, so fname. So we have already put an fname, or item rather, item. Okay, so this will load the actual folders inside the on a selected path. Okay, now for the load content, load node. Okay, so here is the directories. Now the next part would be, we want to get the actual files inside to it. So fname is fl name is equal to directory dot get files. So here in this part, we are trying to get the path file names. So for each, again, you have two ways. You may use for each or for loop, but right now I'll be using for each. Here I'll be selecting fl name, and then lb fname lb content dot load, okay, that items dot add. Okay, so I want to put it on fl item. Okay, so I think we have managed to create the actual application that we want to do, which is to load the actual method or the content of the folder and files on our default folder. So if we run the application and call this one, let's see, save. Okay, on form load, I'll be calling this one nm dot get content, and then nm dot path default path, and then the list view 1. Okay, list view 1 is the actual list view we are using. So if you look at that one, if you run the actual application, you can see that we already have different paths here. Okay, so we have 4 items. So if you look at the 4 items, the 4 items represents the 4 folders on the 4 items on the bin default folder. So let's see. Okay, open. Okay, it should be there's a 4 item on it on the bin debug. Okay, bin debug, and then 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's see if we can manage to get the actual path only and not the address. So let's have this one. Let's check. Okay, so I'll be using this path.get file name, path.get file name, and then let's see if what will happen if I use this one. And there you go. So we have test the folder, we have the NoteManager, and the NoteManager.npb and test.txt. So to do that, to make it more precise, we want to do that our path would be this one. So I'll add another folder, which is the notes. Okay, so we'll be using this one instead of having the actual default folder, because we managed to load the exe file. Okay, it should be this one. So I'll just create a folder, and that on our okay, so we'll not be creating a folder, but rather we'll be creating a constructor so that it will create our default folder. public note manager. Then what we want to do is default directory. If directory that exists default path is equal to false, therefore we want to create the directory that create directory default path. Okay, so if we run this one, you can see that there will be no content here because we have changed our default path. The default path right now is the notes here, so we can delete this one. Safe to delete that one. So if I create a folder, for example, notes category is, for example, create a category of the notes daily task. Okay, if I click daily task, therefore it will create a note daily task here. So there is daily task. And then, for example, if I create a note, for example, projects, then I save, then you see the projects is already there. So now if I rerun the program, you see that the actual contents are already here, daily task and project.text. Now what we want to do is to put the label here, the path. Okay, on form load you put the path. Okay, form load you put path underscore, change the content of the path so that we can see the actual path that we are trying to manipulate. So path.text is equal to nm dot default path. So that is our default path. So if we, and then nm that get contents already there, and then we change the save button. We add the save button that every time that we create a certain file or folder, we create nm dot get content, and then we put the path. So the path would be the let's say, okay, so string object path, nm dot object. Okay, to make it safe, I'll be using path underscore. Okay, path underscore, and then you select this v1. Okay, so there you go, path underscore that text. So you look at the code. So if you look at the code here, there you go. So you see it's already here, the location, see user, and then the notes, and then daily tasks and projects. So we have managed to create the actual application we are trying to accomplish of creating a file and creating a folder. The complexity of this application depends is on the part of this one. If we'll be having a subfolder, that would be the challenge that we'll be facing up, because every time we select an item, there must be a corresponding action. If it is a text file, therefore you will need to load the text file. If it is a folder, you need to load the subfolder of it. So the first thing that we will be accomplishing is to do the text file. Okay, so text file. So to do that, I'll be having a save button here. Okay, I'll change this one, save button. Okay, later on we change it. Now we go to NoteManager, and that is a function for the save file here. So the save file, we will be utilizing a technique called StreamWriter. So the first thing that you want to do is StreamWriter, and then str is equal to new StreamWriter. So the StreamWriter is a function in what we call function in system.io, so that we can utilize the writing of a file. So right now, if we create str.write object content text, the content of the text box will be written to the selected path that we are trying to edit or modify. So for example, str.write, and then we want to manage it. Take note, if we open a StreamWriter, you need to close it. So close. Let's see if what will happen. So we call save file here. Okay, in order to do that, you go to the button and then remove this one, because right now it is similar to this function. So for example, if you double click this one, since I copy and paste it, so it's like the code of that one will be called, not the code that will be adding. So I'll remove this one, then click this one. So to do that, we will be having what we call nm.savefile. Okay, so we have the object path. So the object path would be the path.text plus the list view being selected, plus list view 1 that's selected item sub0 that text. So concatenated with the actual item being selected in the list view is the path of the file that we are trying to manipulate. So we want to text box 2 1. So we want to send the content of text box 1 to be written to that file being selected. To test if our code is already working, we need to run the actual application. So first, we go to our application and then we select on which text file to be manipulated. For example, project 1 or projects.txt will be the one to be selected or to be manipulated. Right now, this text box has no, or this text file does not have any content. So if I open the file, so let's see, if I open the file point projects.txt, there is no content on it. So let's check if it is saving or not. So the code saved. What will happen is that it will get this path being selected, the default path, and then concatenated with the project.txt. So it's like /project.txt. Now if we create or put a date on it, this is a test note, and we press save, it must be, the code should write the actual content that we are putting on the text box. So if I press save, so right now there is no error. So if we look at the actual text file, let's reopen it. Okay, so it's already loaded. This is a test note. So basically, the actual file is being already manipulated. So for example, if we create another file, note. So let's say note for coding. Okay, coding. Okay, I'll press save. So you see, it's already have manipulated or shown the text or the files inside the folder, but there's a duplicate because what happened is we did not clear the list view. So let me fix that error. I'll go to the NoteManager, and then on the load content, prior to inserting the data on the list view, I'll be clearing the list view. LV, where is the content? Load content. Okay, this one. So LV content that items that clear. So if we run this one, okay, so we have run the program, but it's already clear. Okay, so I think that items that clear. Okay, so that, so you see there is note for coding. Okay, so note for coding is this one. So for example, if I selected note for coding and I want to create a note for it, coding is fun. Okay, save. So there's no error on it. So if I open the note for coding, there is a coding is fun. So already have manipulated the data. So basically we have able to add and create a folder and file. At the same time, we have managed to save or to write the text on a file. So now what we want to accomplish next is to load the actual content of the note. So now we go to load note. So what we'll be doing is to do this one. If file that exists, okay, file that exists object path, okay, so we are talking about if it is existing or not. This is equal to true. Therefore, what we want to do is load the file. So to load the file, we'll be using StreamReader. Okay, reader is equal to new StreamReader. Okay, so StreamReader. Then we put the object path. So we already have a variable or a class instantiating the StreamReader class. Take note, the StreamReader class represents how to read a certain file and convert it into a stream. Right now, we are reading a content of a text file. So let's see if we can do this one. Txt note that text is equal to reader that read to end. Let's see if we can manage this one. So before that, we'll be using txt note that text is equal to empty. Okay, so what we want to do is upon selecting here, we load. If it is a text file, we load it here. Okay, if not, therefore there is no loading of that content because it is a folder. So here I'll double click the list view. We are now on the selected index change. So what we want to do is check whether if there's a item being selected. So this one is the code. And then now we want to do nm. Okay, so I'll just declare a string path. So the string path is equal to path.text, then concatenated with the actual item being selected on this view. So this one, so plus this view one that selected items sub0 that text. Okay, so then nm that load note, we put the actual object path, which is the path, and then we put the text box for the note. Okay, am I correct? Is it this one, text note? Let's see. Okay, I'll change this one to a more relevant name. Okay, txt editor. Okay, so go to the code and then we call txt editor. There, I think we can then, if we run this application, see what will happen. Okay, so there is no item being selected, there's no text. Oh, there you go. Coding is fun. And then if I click projects the text, you see it's already loading the actual content of each text. So if I type this is a note, this is a code program written in C# to write a note on a specific folder. Okay, so I hit save and then I click note for coding. Okay, take note, coding is fun, but we go to project.txt. Okay, the changes, the content that we have created is already changed. Okay, updated or updated the actual content of the text file based on the text being generated. Now, the challenging part for now is that what we want to accomplish is we select a certain item here, and then it goes to the next folder. So it's like we are navigating into a subdirectory. So how do we accomplish that one? To accomplish that one, we will be adding a button called next and back. The next button represents the actual manipulation or the actual loading of the subdirectory of a folder. Not only the subdirectory, but also the content or the files inside that subdirectory. Another is that we go back. If we go back, it will go to the actual previous directory, so that it will show the content of that previous directory. So how do we accomplish that one? So to do that, I'll be adding some control here on the bottom part of this panel. I'll be adding another panel for the next and back button. So toolbox, okay, I'll just copy this one. Okay, so and then I'll go to docking style would be not on the top but rather on the bottom. Then I'll remove the following text or controls, and then I'll change this one. I'll add this one. Save. The save is for the save. This one would be the next button, and then the other one would be the back button. So back, next and back. So the next and back, what we'll be doing is that we concatenate the selected item here, and then we concatenate to the folder being selected. So example, we do this one. Okay, so we manipulate the default path. First is we do this one, if directory. So take note that if directory is not enabled here, or just create this one, I'll add this function here on the NoteManager to check whether a directory is existing or not. So what I'll do is if public bool check directory. Okay, then what we want to do is we put a certain path on what directory we want to check if it is existing or not. So this is the let's say path directory path, and then what we'll do is create a boolean variable, let's say return directory that exists the path. So it will just return whether if it is true or false, if it is existing or not. So now on our program, what we want to do on the next button is to check whether it is an existing or not, if it is an existing directory or not. So if I'll do nm, so I'll just create a path. Okay, create a s path, which is equal to path plus the actual list view that selected item sub0 dot text. So the selected item on the list view, if it is a path or not. And then what we want to do is do some updating on the default path. Okay, default updating on the label path text if it is existing or not. So for example, we want to nm.check directory path underscore the text. Okay, take note, this one is the text, this is the label. Then if it is existing, therefore we want to update the path, the text path, that text equal to spath. Okay, so that is our program. Now what we want to do is to load nm.load get content, and then we put the path, which is spath, and then we put the list view container, which is list view 1. So for example, if we run the actual program now, so we select daily task and we press next. Observe in this part, so I press next, the daily task is here, and then the list view has no content anymore. There is no content because there is no existing content on that specific daily task. But if I add, for example, note test note, okay, test sub a note, and then I press save, it should have a content here, test sub. So let's see if what will happen if I run it again. Let's try to run it again, and then daily task, then next. So I think it does not work. So let's check what is the error. So on the save part, instead of it's correct, it's path.txt. Okay, so we are here, we create default path instead of the actual content of the label. So path, okay, we change this one to path.text. So if we go to our folder, you see that the text file that we have created is in here because that is the default folder. So now if we select this one, okay, so if I go to daily task and I press next and I create a note test note sub and I press save, there is test note sub. Then if I create a folder, sub folder goes here. Okay, so there is our subfolder. So we have already managed to create the subfolder and then the test sub. And then if I test the saving, save and create a sub note. If I press save, and then click the subfolder, it's already saved. Now the next functionality that we want to accomplish is to do the going back to the subdirectory. For example, we created a subfolder here, and then we select next. We want to go back to daily task until it reaches the notes. That is the next functionality that we'll be performing. So this is the next part that we will be doing is we go to the back button. Okay, go to the back button and then we add some codes on it. Okay, back button, and we add some codes on it to check if the file is existing or not, or the folder is existing or not first. And we want also to check whether the default folder reaches the path on the label, the path on the path.text, or the path on the path that we had created already reaches the default folder because we don't need to go back further anymore because we reached the default folder, which is the notes. So the first thing that we check is if nm that default directory default path not equal to path.txt. If it is not equal to path.txt, therefore we want to remove a certain part of that path.txt. So it's like this one, path.txt. Okay, path.txt is equal to path.txt dot remove. We put path.txt that last index of the forward slash. Okay, forward slash. So it will remove the actual content, and then it will remove the forward slash, the remaining text of the forward slash, and then it will update the content of the path.txt. So let's see if what it does. What is the function doing? So if we go daily task, then we next go to subfolder, see that. Now if I go back, see it removes the subfolder, and if I go back again, it goes to daily task. But if I press back again for the last time for the notes, it will not change or remove the notes. Okay, so now we go to the next button, and then we just copy this one so that we can able to go back. So s path.txt, okay, path.txt, then the list view. So for example, we go to the daily task. There you go, you have daily task, and if I go back, see it reloads the content. Next, okay, I put next, and then I go next again, and then I put, for example, test my sub. Okay, and then again I add save, then test, then next. Okay, test my sub is already there, and then I go back, and you'll see the function for the next and back is already accomplishing its task. So, but the important thing is you need to check whether it is the list view. The list view has a item being selected first before doing it, because if not, it will trigger that error. So if list view 1 that selected items that count is greater than 0. Okay, same with I think back does not need that anymore, but here we need to clear our text box, txtf name the text, and then refocus. Okay, and then txtf name that focus. Okay, so run. So I think we have enabled that code, and then what we want to do is this one. If I go to this text box and I hit enter, it must trigger the save button. Okay, so I'll go to the save button first. This one, I copy this one, button click 2 for the save button. Okay, I'll just copy this method or function rather, a method rather, and then what I'll do is call reuse that code, or recall we call that code on key up. I think key up. Okay, press key up, then we go if e.key code to check what key is being entered, and we want to do is enter, and then we paste that code, and then we call this object and then this current event. So if I do this one, example test, and then I press enter, there you go, you see text already there. If I select this one and I go to next, and I want to create another folder on it, folder enter. So see, folder enter is already there. Then I go next, I go back, it's already there. So take note that all of those folders that we had created are done physically on our drive. So you look at this one. I go to debug. Okay, we have the notes. We have the notes being created, daily task, and then the subfolders, and then another subfolders for each of these items. So all of these things are already accomplished in a way that it is reflecting the actual content of that folder. So that is the functionality for the next and pack. So now the next part on this code is to able to delete a certain content or a content or a folder on that specific category. So what I'll be doing is to go to the NoteManager. Okay, NoteManager, and then I'll go to delete object, this one. Then what I'll do is I create a message box asking if they want really to delete the file. Are you sure you want to delete? Okay, so I'll just copy this one to make it shorter. Okay, I'll just create a variable string message is equal to, okay, and then what we want to do is a button yes message, and then double quote, 3 double quotes. You can see the actual convention here. Then we want a message button yes or no, then equal to dialog result yes. If yes, therefore what we want to do is delete the actual object. Okay, so first is we check whether it is a folder or not. If check directory object path is true, therefore it is a directory. Okay, therefore we want to do is directory dot delete, then we put object path. Okay, I think there's an option for recursive, meaning all of the subfolders will be deleted. So I'll put true. Okay, subfolders and file. Else what we want to do is file dot delete. So it's like we are checking if it is a directory or a text or a file. So then we put object path. Okay, then I think that's the code. That's the thing that we want to do right now. So on the delete function, go here. So I'll add delete here, then change this one, then delete. Okay, I change this one to delete. Then this delete, what will happen is I'll be calling nm.delete object. Okay, what I want to do is path the text. Okay, take note, we want to do the string path is equal to path the text added with the item being selected on the list view. That selected item sub-0 text. Okay, don't forget to check if there's an item being selected. Greater than 0. Okay, so here, then what I want to do is this one, path. Okay. Path. Okay. So that's the code that we'll be utilizing the delete function. So, and after deleting, we want to nm that get content and then the path.text to refresh the actual content of path.text. So now if you run the code, okay, observe it should be that if I click daily task, okay, if I click daily task, all of the folders under daily task will be deleted. So if I click delete files and folders, if I press yes, so it's already clear. And if we go to the actual folder of the program that we have created, okay, you'll see that the daily task folder and its corresponding subfolders are already deleted. Okay, so bin debug. Okay, so notes, daily task is not seen or not existing anymore. So if I delete another code again here, if I delete note for coding, so yes, if I press yes, then what will happen is note for coding is already removed. So what I'll be doing is to clear the text box if there's a content on txt, editor the text so that it's more cleaner. Okay, so that's our code. And the final code, that the final demonstration that I'll be showing to you is to utilize a menu strip or context menu strip. So if you go to the actual toolbox and look at the context menu strip, it will enable us some options. Okay, it shows here. Okay, so for example, we add a we want to delete. Okay, so we want to delete, for example. So when we do the delete, what will happen is it will call this one. Okay, so let's see what will happen. Okay, context menu strip. I double click this one and then there is our code, this.e. So I'll just call the delete function. Now take note that we need to assign that one. So for the you need to select the list view, go to properties, and then look for the context menu strip property. There is a context menu strip. You assign what will be the context menu strip. Right now, the name of context menu strip is context menu strip 1. I select that one so that if I run the actual application and I select or right click an item here, there's an option showing the delete. So if I click delete, are you sure you want to delete? And if I press yes, so automatically it enables us the delete function. Okay, so now another thing that we want to do is to rename the actual file or folder being selected. So the rename function, we go to NoteManager again. Okay, NoteManager, for the last item, for the last functionality, we want to rename the object. So the first thing again is to check whether it is a directory or not. Check directory object path. Okay, it's existing or not. If true, then we want to directory that rename, that move. I think rename or move. Okay, move. We move that directory, and then source directory name and destination directory name. So let's say object path is the source directory name and new file name is the new directory name. Okay, else if it is a what we call a file, so file that rename. Okay, file info, see if there's a rename. Okay, I think there's no rename, but rather file that move. Okay, the same, I think just do object path and then new file name. So let's see if what will happen. Okay, rename object, and then what we'll be doing is we move this one. Every time that we select an item, we put the file name on the okay, so I'll just do this one temporary. It's up to you to improve the UI. I'll just change this one to rename. Okay, I'll put on the top is the same, so that I'll put on the top is the same. The rename is on the top, so that save would be the default one. So rename. Let's see if we can manage to rename it. Change this one. Nick. Change this one. Okay, so we want to rename. So take note, the original name of that path or folder or text file is the path.txt plus the item being selected on the list view. So we go like this. So if this view one selected items that count is greater than 1, then our path is the same. So path.txt path is equal to path.txt plus the actual item being selected on the list view. So it's like we are concatenating the actual path. So we are concatenating the list view one that selected items sub0.text. Okay, now what we want to do is to compare this one or check this one if it is existing or not. So before that, we go to the new path. Okay, is equal to path. Okay, path the text. Okay, plus okay txt fname dot text. Okay, so that is the new path. So what we want to do is nm dot rename object and new path and then path. So actually it's path, the old path, and then the new file name, new path. Okay, so before that we go again to our rename object because this one has no .txt, so we add a .txt so that it is renaming the actual path. So let's see what will happen. So this one is test.txt. I'll change this one to text rename. So if I click rename, okay, see user could not find file debug notes. Okay, so I think no file. Okay, so we need to indicate the text is still. Let's see if we can do this one. Okay, so I think we have an error, so let me check it first. Okay, so let me check. I is equal to L to new file. Let's see if we can use this one, object path, then fl dot rename. So it's not working, so we need to check the rename. Okay, so we are experiencing the error for the rename. So let's see what will be the solution. Okay, Okay, so let's see. I think so it's the same. So I think there is just a one error that moved. What would be the error? Let's see. Okay, move. Check. Oh, see. The one that we have selected has already have a txt. This one. So no need to put txt. Only in this part. Okay. So let's see. I think it will work now. Test run. It's being used. So test text. See the load content. We have a close. Okay, don't forget to close your StreamWriter reader. Okay, reader that close. There you go. That's the error. So let's see. Text test run. There. So you see there's no error anymore. But if we look at on our folder, it's already test run.txt. So what we want to do is to refresh our code or our text after the deletion, after the change of name. So I'll copy this one and then I'll go to rename. Then what I'll be doing is just I'll select add text. Okay, and then rename. So txt fname that text. Okay, empty. So run. If we run the actual code, we must accomplish the renaming. Test rename, change this one and then change this one to test and then press name. Test.txt is already there. And then if I change a folder, for example, we add a folder, test folder. Okay, test folder is already there. Then we go next, folder 2. Okay, so we have folder 2 and go back. Okay, test folder, and we rename this one. We rename test folder to main folder. What will happen should be it will be renamed at the same time the subfolder should also still there. So main folder, and then I go next, folder 2 is already there. So I think that's all. We have managed to create our NoteManager. So we delete all of this so that we do the recap. Okay, so delete. So we have now emptied our application. So the first thing, the actual code or the actual application that we have managed to accomplish is to create a certain program that will allow us to create a folder. The folder might be your category for each note that you have created, and then a note is a file that you put all of the content of that note or write the content of that note. So if I create a folder, for example, category note category. Okay, so I add, see, note category is already there. Now if I press next, category 1 would be for coding. Next category would be let's say for lectures. The next category is again for music, for example music. Okay, so you already have 3 categories, and then you can add a text file on it. So general notes, then I press enter, we have general notes. And if I press the notes being created has a category. You can add more notes or folders as you wish. Okay, so if I press save, you can see that the content is already there. So now what I want to do is that every time that you perform that one, you have note category, go next for coding. So we have another folder, text on it. Then if I go for coding and I add more text file on it, it's unlimited depending on the limit of the Windows application, if how many folders and how many text file are available or acceptable for creating a path. Now if I go back, you can see it's going back. So it's very what we call complex application, and it performs all of those things that we want to do. It creates a folder, it deletes a folder, it rename a folder. At the same time, all of those functionality can also be done using a file. So in the near future, if you have what we call different use cases, I think it will give you an idea on what would be the approaches or approach that you might consider on attaining or solving the problem that being given to you by your boss or your teacher. So I think we have managed to finish our NoteManager, and for the next series or the next version of this one, we will be using threading, because threading is a very important technique. This overcomes the problem when a certain form freezes and we don't know if it is still working or not. Okay, so please stay tuned and practice coding, and happy coding.